Welcome to week 4. All right, I am still in South Carolina, so you'll catch some Spanish moss and palm trees in the background. All right, so we had the week on relativism, and so let's discuss what I saw on the discussion board. So the main two questions that you focused on were, is it okay to criticize the norms of another culture? And is there a difference between facts and opinions, or what should we think about that whole thing? So regarding criticizing other cultures, actually with both of those I saw a lot of back and forth and disagreement, and that's good. It means that I think you're catching why this is worth talking about, right? So for example, Giles got it kicked off by noting that the norms nowadays could be slavery if someone didn't criticize it, right? And I mean, some people kind of criticized him for making a short post, but that's really, that's enough to get it kicked off, right? So if the question is just, is it ever okay to criticize the norms of another culture? And we've got an example like this where, slavery was a norm of U.S. culture, or at least Southern U.S. culture, right? Then yeah, would it be okay to criticize slavery during that time, or still, and so that's plenty to get us kicked off. A lot of the pushback, I think, it might be talking past each other. I'm not sure, because for example, most responses talked about how we maybe shouldn't criticize. I would think things that I would call customs, how people dress, what they eat, what their weddings are like, or things like that, right? So there were though some that were more expansive, right? So Nying, for example, said that we all love our own cultures, and so to criticize them is just bullying. Samara talked about how in her sociology class, the way it was taught, that basically we should just think of these differences as just different. We're all different, and we're all weird. Yeah, so that is actually often the way that sociology is taught. This is one of the differences between sociology department and philosophy department. Philosophy department, we are going to go ahead and try to ask hard questions and criticize usually. So this is why we're getting started with this kind of discussion, is just to think about when is that okay, right? And it's probably not okay if you're criticizing how someone dresses. That is probably bullying. But I would think is okay if a culture is practicing slavery the way the U.S. used to in the South. Then it is okay to criticize that, I would think, right? And so what makes the difference? And I suppose we need to start thinking with things like justice. And of course, if there is no such thing as a moral fact, then that's a whole different matter. And that's partly why I had that other discussion on it, right? Is there a difference between facts and opinions? And again, we had some differences here. In general, the people who think that there is that the distinction is confused, pointing to overlap, right? So, for example, Daniel even said he changed his mind on this after watching the video. I think it was mostly because of the overlap of how you can believe a fact, you can have an opinion about a fact, and other related things like that. On the other side, I think mostly people were thinking of the difference as difference in amount of evidence. So if you just have a hunch with no evidence, then we like to call that an opinion. That's a way we use the word. I don't know if the right contrast to that kind of thing is fact. This might be partly why this is just problematic. If nothing else, I think the video shows that these terms are ambiguous. And so you need to make sure that people understand what you're doing when you're using the terms. But so yeah, if you use the word fact, you need to make sure that people understand what you mean by it. You might just mean a statement that's true. A fact is just a statement that's true, and the statement can be true with or without evidence, right? But you might mean something like something that all scientists would agree on because there's so much evidence backing it up, something like that. That if that's what you mean, then say that, right? And there is a difference between that kind of thing and just a gut hunch. So the other way it might go that's different, Jackson pointed out actually, is so in the example and regarding something being delicious, how this could be a scientific fact that something actually does trigger certain, I don't know, things in your brain. Jackson pointed out that, but it doesn't trigger the same way in everyone's brain, right? So it differs between all of us, and that's what makes it different from a fact. So again, I would hesitate to use the words this way, but the concept is important. The concept you're pointing to is the difference between something being objective and subjective. If something's objective or mind independent is a way to describe what I mean by objective. If it's mind independent, then it's the same no matter where you're viewing it from, right? But if it's not mind independent, if it's subjective, then it's going to be different depending on where you view it from. When I taste chocolate, my experience is different than when you taste chocolate. It's subjective in that sense, even if it's not optional or anything like that. So that's an important philosophical difference too. These are things you can find in your textbook, by the way. This is why the textbook takes the time to go through all these different kinds of things that we could mean. And so we're just getting used to these different ideas. All right, anyway, that's it for today, for this walking video, and let's keep going.